Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Piz. Ukraine War breaking news update from the 5th of July 2025. And we're going to talk about 155th Naval Infantry Brigade. These are supposedly a crack unit of Russian Marines. They have had quite an interesting past. They've had an absolute tonking in Vuhledar in previous years, actually, in this conflict. If you remember, Vuhledar down on the southern front line on that dogleg when it was a corner in that front line rather than being that sort of diagonal front line these days. Vuhledar was this super prominent holdout for the Ukrainians on higher ground, and the Russians tried to storm it with a couple of different units. One was the 155th Naval Infantry Brigade. They got such a tonking there. They lost voluminous amounts of equipment, very famously so. And they were running predominantly onto mine after mine after mine, while also being hit by artillery. They just lost phenomenal amounts of kit. They famously reconstituted quite a few times. They've more recently been up in Kursk region, where they had a hard time up there, and the Ukrainians gave them another bloody nose. And when we talk about say airborne divisions, VDV, or Naval Infantry Brigades, the Marines being crack units, that was how it was at the beginning of the war. But now we are 3 years into the war, and these units have been reconstituted. They've lost their original elite forces. They used to take the cream of the existing armed forces units, go to these other units that have already had training and functioning military units, and say, right, we're going to take him, and cream off the top of the unit to take their elite troops and then put them into the crack units and then train them even further. But what's happened since the beginning of wars is these elite units have been absolutely hammered, and they have then just gone out and got whoever they can, even like newbies, like green recruits, and taken them in, and they have replaced really experienced soldiers, and they aren't the cream of an already trained crop, but they are so newbies, and then they reconstitute, and that happens time after time, and they then become a unit that's not particularly an elite unit, although they have this heritage of being so. So I think that's what's happened to the 155th. They have like many units, and you can say the same for the Ukrainians as well, of course. As the war goes on, yeah, you do get experienced troops coming in and surviving, but many of your experienced and crack trained troops from the beginning of the war will not be alive anymore, sadly. And so sadly for the Ukrainians, for the Russians, these guys have been operating up in Kursk. They've had a bloody nose up there, and then we heard recently that their Major General Mikhail Gudkov, the Deputy Commander-in-Chief of the Russian Navy, who was a former commander, I think he might have still been acting commander of the 155th, not 100% sure there, but he's just been killed up in Koronevo in the Kursk region. So he also served as a commander of the Russian 155th. I know he certainly was. Whether he still was, well, that's kind of where they're operating, so I imagine he was. Gudkov was reportedly killed in a strike on a command post in Koronevo in Kursk region. The attack also claimed the lives of at least 10 other senior officers. So then we heard that one of his other officer friends here also died. Russian media confirmed the death of Guard Major General, Deputy Commander-in-Chief of the Russian Navy, former commander of the 155th Brigade of the Russian Armed Forces, Gudkov, as well as his close comrade, Russian Navy officer Lieutenant Colonel Nariman Shikhaliyev. Okay, so then we know definitely there was at least, one officer taken out in this strike. As now claimed, this is 2 days ago by Russian sources, 4 HIMARS missiles were fired at the Russian base in Koronevo, Kursk region. Various Russian sources report from 10 to more than 20 Russians killed in the attack, many of whom were officers. Okay, so that was what we heard. Then today, this comes out. So this is a Russian mill blogger reporting this. Of course, take it with a pinch of salt. But many people are thinking, yes, this is really good news from a Ukrainian point of view. He says the entire command of the 155th Brigade was wiped out in the Kursk region after 4 Ukrainian HIMARS struck with precision. He's also complaining about poor electronic warfare coverage and the low quality of government-made drones. So there's not really a long piece here or a long video here, but it is another piece of the jigsaw. And we know that the Ukrainians have been hitting command posts quite frequently at the moment. I have a feeling that they have had a pretty good couple of weeks in terms of taking out some key nodes. We've seen some in Donetsk. In Donetsk city, there were some precision strikes the other night. Up in Koronevo, we've seen Sevastopol, where the acting commander of the Black Sea Fleet was killed. And not for the first time. Previously the commander of the Black Sea Fleet was killed in Sevastopol. I don't know, whether it's a year and a half ago or so. But now, I think we are seeing a concerted effort to take out some of these nodes. And I think that's really good news. And we've also seen Storm Shadow missiles be used. And in fact, there's a report right now that there are potentially 8 Storm Shadows being sent into Crimea. That's what the Russians are reporting at the moment. So, the Ukrainians definitely are using those Storm Shadows again. Anyway, this mill blogger says nobody's telling us that the entire command of the 155th Brigade got effing wiped out because 4 HIMARS hit the target dead on, he complains. Because our electronic warfare ain't working, and it's expensive. They don't buy it. So these effing drones, Dobrynya, that piece of S, that doesn't fly, needs to be redone, etc., etc. So he goes on to complain about other things, but it's this, okay, it's not a lot, we're not hearing a lot here, but we heard initially that 10 people might have died, then it was 10 to 20 people might have died in that HIMARS strike on a command post, and then we have this guy just saying the entire command of the 155th Brigade got effing wiped out in that HIMARS strike. This is really, really significant. And the 155th is having a bad time of it because, as far as I can work out, they are based very much to the east in Vladivostok area on the eastern seaboard, a port that is pretty important because we have seen, I think, China get involved in Vladivostok. They've got some sort of rights there recently. It's like Russia is there's a lot of leverage China has over Russia, and I think some interesting shenanigans going on there with regard to what China is doing in Vladivostok. But we hear today, just now, so not only did we have that mill blogger saying what he said, we hear that gas pipeline explosion near Vladivostok has cut off supply to parts of Russia's 155th Naval Infantry Brigade. According to RBC Ukraine, the blast sparked a fire that destroyed sections of Vladivostok pipeline, which powers several military sites along the Sea of Japan coast. And indeed, the Kyiv Independent reports on this as well. Pipeline supplying Russian military exploded in the Far East near Vladivostok, intelligence source says. They occurred on the early morning of the July the 5th. So that is, of course, today, 1 to 2 a.m. this morning, Russian time, with Russian special services and repair teams arriving shortly thereafter. Explosions damaged a gas pipeline, destroyed a water pipeline that supplied military facilities in the area. A fire followed, the explosions and destroyed branches of the Vladivostok gas pipeline along the Sea of Japan coastline. The damaged pipeline provides gas to several Russian military facilities on the coast, including the 155th Naval Infantry Brigade or Marine Brigade of the Pacific Fleet of the Russian Armed Forces. A water pipeline destroyed in an explosion provided drinking water to military garrisons in the area. Local services cut off mobile internet and communications in the Lazurnaya Bay area of Vladivostok, also according to an unnamed source. So Ukraine regularly strikes military targets deep within Russian territory in an effort to diminish Moscow's fighting power. This is, of course, a very, very long way from Ukraine. So one would assume that's going to be more likely sabotage than a strike. But 155th having a bad day bad week at the office here, as we hear that they might well have lost their entire command, and that is a crack unit, or at least it should be a crack unit. So I think that's a really significant haul for the Ukrainians. Anyway, let me know what you think. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon.